Welcome to Lecture 5 of PS201 Seven-Step Problem Solving. This lecture covers Step 4 of the framework, Build a Work Plan. We have defined the problem, disaggregated it into a structured issue tree, and prioritized the branches we intend to investigate. Now we need to convert that priority ranking into a concrete plan of action. A work plan is the bridge between analytical intent and analytical execution, and without it, even the best prioritized project will drift. Here is the course roadmap. 4 lectures are behind us. Today we build the work plan, the document that specifies who will do what, by when, and to what standard. Ahead of us are 3 more lectures: data collection and analysis, synthesis, and communication. The work plan sets the conditions for all 3. A well-built plan makes the analysis phase faster, the synthesis phase cleaner, and the communication phase more confident. Without a plan, analysis drifts. Teams begin investigating branches that interest them rather than branches that matter. Individual analysts make inconsistent methodological choices. Deadlines pass without clear deliverables. The plan prevents all of this. More specifically, the work plan converts the priority ranking from lecture 4 into a set of specific, assigned, time-bounded tasks. It turns "we should focus on the cost" branch into "the cost analysis will be conducted by this person, using this method, and delivered by this date." Each prioritized issue on your ranked list must map to a specific analysis task. The mapping is direct and explicit. If the issue is "Are Northmart's fixed costs growing faster than revenue?", then the analysis task is build a monthly fixed cost to revenue ratio for each of the 6 stores over the past 24 months using the management accounts. The task has a defined question, a defined data source, a defined method, and a defined output. Vague issues produce vague analyses, and vague analyses produce weak recommendations. For each analysis task, the work plan should include a 1-sentence question that the analysis will answer. Not a topic, a question. Labor costs is a topic. Has labor cost as a percentage of store revenue increased at Northmart over the past 24 months? And if so, at which stores and in which roles, is a question. A question can be answered. A topic cannot. Writing the question forces precision, it makes the scope of the analysis explicit and prevents the analyst from wandering beyond the boundaries of the task. The second element of the analysis specification is the method. How will the question be answered? Will it require financial trend analysis, regression modeling, customer interviews, benchmarking against industry peers, or some combination? The method must be appropriate for the question, not defaulted to whatever the analyst is most comfortable with. Specifying the method in advance also allows the project manager to check whether the required skills and tools are available on the team before the work begins. The third element is ownership. Every analysis task must have a named owner, one person who is responsible for delivering it. The owner is not necessarily the only person who works on the task, but they are the person who is accountable for its quality and its timeliness. Multi-ownership creates ambiguity. When 2 people own a task, each assumes the other is tracking it. Single ownership creates clarity. Assign 1 owner per task, named explicitly in the work plan. The fourth element is the output. What physical deliverable will this analysis produce? A chart, a table, a model, a written summary? The output specification serves 2 purposes. First, it forces the analyst to think ahead about what done looks like before they start, which prevents scope creep and ensures the work is proportionate to the question. Second, it enables the project manager to review progress by checking whether the specified output exists. If the output does not exist, the task is not done, regardless of how much work has been invested. Matching the right method to each question is one of the most consequential decisions in the work plan. For questions about cost, has a specific cost category grown, and by how much? Financial analysis of management accounts and cost ledgers is the appropriate method. This involves extracting the relevant cost data, building trend lines, calculating ratios, and comparing against relevant benchmarks. Using an interview-based approach for a question that is fundamentally about numbers is not just inefficient, it produces the wrong type of evidence. For questions about trends and relationships, is there a statistical association between Northmart's promotional spend and basket size? Regression analysis is the appropriate method. Regression quantifies the relationship between variables and tests whether that relationship is statistically significant. Applying simple percentage trend analysis to a question that involves multiple interacting variables will miss the relationship or misattribute it. The method must match the logical structure of the question. For questions about perception and motivation, why are customers choosing competitors, or what do store managers believe is driving the cost increase, structured interviews are the appropriate method. Quantitative data cannot answer perception questions. A customer survey can measure satisfaction scores, but only an interview reveals the reasoning behind those scores. Specify whether the interviews should be structured, semi-structured, or depth interviews, and how many respondents are required for the finding to be credible. For questions about relative performance, are Northmart's cost ratios in line with comparable grocery retailers? Benchmarking is the appropriate method. Benchmarking involves identifying a peer group, sourcing comparable data, normalizing for structural differences, and comparing the results. It answers the question, are we performing differently from others, and if so, by how much? Without a benchmark, you cannot determine whether a cost ratio of 28% is a problem or simply the reality of operating a 6-store grocery chain. A well-constructed work plan looks like a table. Each row is one analysis task. The columns specify the branch from the issue tree, the analysis question, the method, the owner, the data source, and the due date. For Northmart, the first 3 rows might be fixed cost trend analysis, due at the end of week 2, owned by the finance analyst, labor productivity analysis, due at the end of week 2, same owner, and competitor cost benchmarking, due at the end of week 3, owned by the research analyst. The plan is shared with the entire team and with the client on day 1. Analysis paralysis occurs when the work plan is so ambitious that the team is overwhelmed before they begin. The most common cause is specifying too many analysis tasks, including low-priority branches, redundant checks, and exploratory investigations that have no direct link to the recommendation. The cure is strict alignment between the priority ranking and the work plan. Every analysis task in the work plan must trace directly to a prioritized branch. If a task cannot be traced to the priority ranking, it does not belong in the plan. The ghost slide technique is one of the most effective tools for preventing analysis paralysis. Before collecting any data, draw the output of each analysis as a blank chart or empty table, the ghost slide. This forces the analyst to specify exactly what the output will look like, which data points will populate it, and what finding it will support. A ghost slide that cannot be clearly drawn is a sign that the analysis question is not precise enough. Clarify the question before collecting a single data point. Each analysis task in the work plan should have a time box, a maximum number of hours or days that can be invested in it. The time box is not a deadline for when the work must be done, it is a cap on how much effort the task can consume. If the time box expires and the analysis is not complete, the team has a decision to make: extend the time box with explicit justification, accept a lower level of certainty, or cut the task. Time boxing prevents individual analyses from consuming disproportionate resources. Structured problem solving does not require 100% certainty before forming a recommendation. In most real-world engagements, 80% certainty delivered on time is more valuable than 95% certainty delivered late. Build the work plan with this standard explicitly in mind. For each analysis task, specify what an 80% certainty output looks like, what evidence would be sufficient to support the finding without requiring exhaustive investigation. Accept that standard and move on. Every real project operates under constraints, fixed deadlines, limited budget, restricted data access, or a team that is smaller than the work requires. The first step in planning under constraints is to list them explicitly and treat them as fixed. Do not build a plan that assumes the constraint will be relaxed. Do not plan for 12 weeks of analysis when the client has given you 6. Fix the constraints, then design the plan within them. A plan that ignores constraints is not a plan, it is a wish list. When constraints are fixed, the only variable is scope. Cut the lowest priority analyses from the work plan until the remaining tasks fit within the available time and resources. This is not a compromise, it is the correct response to a resource constraint. The priority ranking from lecture 4 tells you exactly which tasks to cut first. Lower priority branches are cut before higher priority ones. The scope reduction is documented, communicated to the client, and reflected in the final recommendation as an explicit limitation. Where 2 or more analysis tasks are independent, where the output of one does not depend on the output of another, they should be conducted in parallel, not in sequence. In Northmart's plan, the fixed cost analysis and the customer transaction analysis are independent. They can proceed simultaneously with different owners. Sequential execution of independent tasks is a waste of elapsed time. Identify every pair of independent tasks in your work plan and assign them to different owners so that they run concurrently. Under time pressure, build ghost slides before collecting any data. Drawing the intended output in advance prevents the most expensive form of wasted effort, conducting a full analysis and then discovering that the output does not answer the question. In a constrained project, the cost of that mistake is not recoverable. Build ghost slides for every analysis task in the first 2 days of the project, review them with the team, and only begin data collection once the outputs have been agreed. The ghost slide technique deserves a closer look because it is underused and highly effective. The principle is simple: before collecting data, draw the output you expect the analysis to produce as a blank chart, an empty table, or a schematic of the finding. For a fixed cost trend analysis, the ghost slide might be a line chart with 12 monthly data points on the horizontal axis and cost as a percentage of revenue on the vertical axis. The chart has no data yet, it is a blank template. But it already specifies the exact shape of the answer. Once the ghost slide is drawn, list every data point needed to populate it. For the fixed cost trend chart, you need 12 months of cost data by category and 12 months of revenue data by store. The list is explicit, not financial data but monthly fixed cost ledger from January to December and monthly store-level revenue from the same period. This specification drives the data collection request. If you cannot name the exact data needed to populate the ghost slide, the analysis question is not precise enough. Before collecting data, test the logic of the ghost slide. Ask, if this chart showed a 10% increase in fixed costs as a percentage of revenue, what would that finding mean for the recommendation? If the answer to that question is it would confirm that costs are the primary driver of the margin deterioration, the ghost slide is logically connected to the recommendation. If the answer is I am not sure what it would mean, the analysis is not well enough specified. Test every ghost slide before investing time in data collection. Once ghost slides are drawn, the data needs are named, and the logic is tested, share the ghost slides with the team and the client before collecting data. This alignment step prevents 2 common failures. The first is misalignment within the team, different analysts proceeding with different assumptions about what the output should look like. The second is misalignment with the client, delivering an output that answers a question the client was not asking. A 30-minute ghost slide review at the start of the project saves days of rework at the end. The first takeaway: the work plan converts the priority ranking into specific, assigned, time-bounded tasks. Without this conversion, prioritization remains an intention rather than a commitment. Each task in the plan must have a clear question, a defined method, a named owner, and a specified output. These 4 elements are not optional refinements, they are the minimum standard for a task that can be tracked, delivered, and reviewed. The second takeaway: use the right method for each question. Financial analysis for cost questions, regression for trend questions, interviews for perception questions, and benchmarking for comparison questions. Using the wrong method produces correct analysis of the wrong thing, which is worse than no analysis at all, because it generates misplaced confidence. The method specification in the work plan is the checkpoint that prevents this mistake. The third takeaway: draw ghost slides before collecting data. This single habit prevents the most expensive analytical mistake, investing significant time and resources in an analysis that does not answer the question. Ghost slides force precision, reveal logical gaps, and create alignment within the team and with the client before any data collection begins. If you adopt only one technique from this lecture, make it this one. Here is the first discussion question. Take your priority ranking from Lecture 4 and build a work plan for the top 3 branches of the Northmart issue tree. For each branch, specify the analysis question, the method you would use, the output you would produce, and a realistic timeline given a 6-person team and a 12-week engagement. Be explicit about which tasks can be parallelized and which must be sequential. The second question. Draw a ghost slide for the fixed cost trend analysis in Northmart's work plan. What type of chart would you use? What is on each axis? What data would you need to populate it? And if the chart showed that fixed costs as a percentage of revenue had increased by 8 percentage points over 2 years, what would that finding mean for the recommendation? Walk through the logic explicitly. The final question. You have a work plan with 15 analysis tasks, but your project has a 6-week timeline and a 3-person team. You have agreed with the client that the timeline is fixed. Walk through the process of scoping the plan down to a deliverable size. Which tasks do you cut first? How do you communicate the scope reduction to the client? And what explicit limitations does the scope reduction create in your final recommendation?